Hello everybody, welcome back to Tempest Books. I'm Rebecca and today we're doing a little bit of a different take on a 24 book TBR for 2024. Hey guys, enjoy the awesome picture for just a minute because this part had to be my voiceover. So I really wanted to bring in prompts to help me pick my 24 book TBR for 2024. But I don't have that many followers yet and I really wasn't confident enough yet to ask them to give me input on this and help me decide. So I figured that in reflection of how I really want my library to end up that kind of quirky and weird and, lots of end of the world stuff, that I would ask an AI program to help come up with various lists of prompts in order, a descending order of just how nuts they were. And this is what we ended up with. I ended up with 4 lists. I had one that is completely nuts, completely random. The first one asks me to find a book whose character primarily communicates through interpretative dance. And it just got weirder from there. And then it scaled down in, weird wackiness until it was at number 4, a list of basically completely normal prompts. So I strung up all those onto my bookshelf above me and I went through the first column, and if I couldn't find anything that suited it for the number 1, I'd move on to list 2, and if I still couldn't find anything that, I'd move on to list 3, and if I was completely out of awesome, weird, wacky prompts, I couldn't find anything that fit, then I would go to your standard ones. So I end up only being able to get 1 out of list 1. It was an awesome list, and clearly my book collection just isn't up to snuff because, I only got 1 out of the first list. But I got a lot out of list 2 and 3, so there are at least some more unusual prompts in here before I was forced to go into list 4. So I have 24 books here. I only have 2 books that are rereads, and the only reason that I picked them is because A, they fit perfectly with the prompts, and B, I actually want to do videos on those books or series later, so it will fit in well to be able to be rereading them. And there is 1 book in here that is basically 2 books in here that are basically placeholders because they're the ones that I picked that fit the prompts perfectly are actually in the mail. They're on their way to me. So they're just kind of sitting in there so that there's 24 in the group. All right, so now that you have seen my running about and my digging through my pile and my scorpion, I have never met a scorpion in my book pile before, but I suppose that is, the risks of having a book pile on the floor. Don't worry, I am only a few weeks away from bookcases, and then there'll be an awesome book organization video. But I will get bookcases. But yes, it was probably the most exciting part of the whole get ready, because that poor little scorpion, he obviously was hurt during his moving around, getting away from me while I was moving around books, so he didn't have a little stinger anymore, so he was just kind of standing there hitting me with this stinger that had no actual stinger on the tail, it had no stinger on the end. So he gave up on that and pinched me instead. When I finally realized, just as I finally realized what he was doing or what I was looking at, he pinched me instead. So that was exciting. So he got turfed outside, so I bet probably ate him. But oh well. Again, the perks of living in the outback and having books on the floor. All right, so we are starting with our first prompt. And so we had to get this one from list 2 because, yes, I don't have a protagonist that communicates through interpretative dance. And so it is unfortunately had to go to, I should say fortunately, because it's a good book. I'm looking forward to this one. A book featuring a talking animal as the main character. Now, this book will be The Book of Riley by Mark Tufo for me. I've gotten the omnibus, so it's all 5 books in one, plus a novella, so 6 books. And the protagonist is a talking dog, or a dog that talks to you as the reader, I should say. It's the main character is an American bulldog, and she is determined to keep her person safe during the zombie apocalypse. And she is somewhat aided by a smaller, yappy small dog, I can't remember what sort, and a cat that she really doesn't like, a grumpy cat. So these three animals are trying to keep their people alive and get them somewhere safe in zombie apocalypse. So that is book 1. And on the off chance that it doesn't come and that, it gets lost in the mail or something like that, the other option was list 4, because I didn't have a book written entirely in second person point of view, which was from list 3, is a book with a one-word title. So this is an older book that I've got, Carriers by Patrick Lynch, and it is just a standard sort of epidemic, virus is going to kill us all sort of book. Okay. And number 2 came from list number 2, and it is a book where the protagonist has an unusual superpower, because unfortunately I don't have a novel written entirely in reverse chronological order or a novel with footnotes that tell a parallel story. I think I've heard about something that does write like that, but I don't remember it. If you remember, let me know, because it does sound interesting. And so for that one we have Reviver by Seth Patrick. Now this guy is basically, it is what it says on the cover. He's a reviver. When someone dies, and so their death is suspicious, or it's definitely a murder, something like that, he briefly brings their soul back to their body so that they can tell people what happened, And this one he's reviving a murder victim when another terrifying presence is suddenly there, but he's told it's in his imagination. And he's fairly sure it's not his imagination. So, the story follows the mystery from there. I'm actually putting this one, towards the top of the TBR, because I've had this one for a couple of years, and it's one of those books that I've always been meaning to get around to because it sounds really cool. And now that I have a specific must read it sort of thing, it's like, yeah, I'll put that towards the front, I think. All right, number 3 came from list number 3, and that is a story where the setting changes drastically with every chapter. And that is because I didn't have a book where the plot is driven by a sentient time-traveling fruit, and I didn't have a book that includes a title with a made-up word. I'm pretty sure I don't have a title with a made-up word, because most of the words that are not basic English words for mine tend to be like just a derivative word or Latin or something, so I'm pretty sure, unfortunately I don't have anything like that. So, book 3 ended up being The Zombie Apocalypse by Stephen Jones. Zombie Apocalypse by Stephen Jones. Now, the reason that this book fit with the drastically changes every chapter is because this book is kind of a compilation of various materials that follow how the zombie apocalypse starts. So it's everything from emails to blog posts to newspaper articles and magazine articles, text messages, government communique, all that sort of stuff. It all tracks to follow how the zombie apocalypse starts. So yes, again, love my zombies, and I actually really like this kind of I actually also really like how this sort of book is put together. I like following the various threads that give you the overall picture. So I was really quite excited about this. Although once I started getting further into the pile, I realized that the rule I gave myself of not being able to swap out later was coming back to bite me in the ass, because there ended up being quite a few prompts that had something similar. And I started to seriously run out of books that were kind of, done in this way. So book 4 was from list 3. And that is a book that unfolds through a series of interconnected short stories, which, again, is why it immediately made me go, oh, maybe I didn't pick a good one for the one before, because I'm already starting to need to find more like it. And unfortunately I had to go with list number 3 because I don't have a story set in a world where people gain superpowers by eating specific foods, or a book with a cover that glows in the dark. I don't have one of those, which is a shame, because that sounds cool. So book number 4 ended up being Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. So this is, I believe, essentially very similar to the zombie book. It is a series of interconnected views of what's happening that build the overall story. So I've actually had this series for quite a while. I've got all 3, and I keep meaning to get to it. Again, like the rest of my 1800 book library, I'll get to it eventually. But yeah, it's that interconnected story threads that I really enjoy following and puzzling out. So number 5 was our only one from number 1. Okay, and it's really not even that wacky. I end up being disappointed in myself because I couldn't get more from number 1. I really couldn't. It is a book with a cover that features a surrealistic landscape. And for me, that one is The Starless Crown. To be honest, I actually think this is probably the prettiest book I got last year. So 2022 even. Actually, when was it? So this book came out in 2021, and I actually think it's probably the prettiest book I got in this year. James Rowlands, which is the author of The Starless Crown, he is one of my, if he's published it, I'll buy it, authors. It's like, oh, he put out a new book. Do I know what it is? No. Am I going to get it anyway? Yes, I am. Because I have been reading him since I was about 14 years old. He's probably the single longest, he's probably the author that I have been reading the longest in a continuous manner throughout the last 20 years. I've been reading this author for 20 years. That's a lot of years for one author. I know that's a lot of books. And he's about there. Yeah. So I love this author. I love his early works were the first that I read. He published them under the name James Clemens to separate his fantasy from his modern sort of take on fiction. So yeah, I think this is probably a very pretty cover. It looks pretty surreal to me. I'm happy with it. All right. So number 6 came from list number 2, and it is a book written entirely in the form of letters or diary entries. So again, this is getting into that slightly different form of storytelling. I'm going, oh no, if there's any more, I'm going to be shit out of luck. I'm going to run out of this sort of story. And the reason it came from list 2 is because I don't have a novel where the characters speak in rhyming couplets. I feel like I should have given the AI a few more rules, Realistic books, or realistically will have been published books. Okay, so I kind of had to do a little bit of interpretation for this one because I didn't have diary entries or journal entries, but these days people tend to consider blogging basically the same thing. And this is a book that is a publication of the blog posts of a girl who is living in an unfolding war zone. So during the 2003 embattlements in Iraq, this girl published her view of it, what was going on, how it was to be a civilian in a war zone. And it is entirely from her blog posts. It is essentially a diary, and she calls herself Riverbend. So that's her online name for this story. I've had it for a while. I got it secondhand, and I initially, when I got it, I was like, that sounds awesome. I know people who've gone over to the various war zones in the last 20 years. So a civilian's view would really be really cool. So number 7 had to come all the way from list number 3, which, by the way, my lists. So number 7, a story that explores the consequences of a seemingly minor decision. So this one came out to be The Silence by Tim LeBron. Now this follows a girl who is deaf, and has been for several years, and it happens that a random group of cave explorers decide to push aside some rocks to get further into a cave, and that causes more rocks to come down, and an ancient creature that has been cut off from evolution, the surface evolution for up to millennia, come flooding out. Now, because they have evolved in the dark, they no longer use their sight, they use sound to hunt. And so this massive pterodactyl seeming things that flood the earth and hunt by sound, basically wiping humanity out. And this is the story from this girl's point of view. I've seen the movie that they adapted from this book, and I didn't mind it. But I did have the book before that, and I couldn't figure out why the book said that this girl knows how to live in silence and so is well adapted to surviving these monsters. And maybe I'm just, a bit brain dead, but it didn't make sense to me. I am half deaf. Like, I am actually probably only have a little over a third the amount of hearing that hearing normal people have. I lost some when I was very young. I was born without some. I lost some when I was very young, and it's degraded further in the last few years. And I know that I've had people come up to me and go, why are you being so noisy? Why are you talking so loud? Why is what you're doing, so loud? Why do you have to be so loud? And it's like, to me, I can't hear the fact that what I'm doing is being done louder than how other people do it. And so I couldn't grasp why, other than the ability to communicate in sign language, this girl had an extra advantage against these animals that only hunt by sound. I mean, to me, if anything, she would be more vulnerable because she doesn't know that what she's doing makes sound. So I'm interested to read this because, frankly, I want an answer to that question. Again, maybe it's obvious, maybe I'm just not using all of my brain in this, but yeah, I'm really wondering. So it will be interesting to read this. Okay, so number 8 came from list 2 because, unfortunately, I don't have a story where the main conflict revolves around a mischievous, shape-shifting shadow. Say that 10 times fast. And so, unfortunately, we had to go with a book set in a parallel universe where history unfolded differently. Now, I think I actually have a couple of those, but the one that came to hand was The Damned by Tarn Richardson, because I recently got the other 2 books in this trilogy. And this follows a World War I setting where I think perhaps it actually has some supernatural elements to it, and the war itself unfolds in a different way, and it takes more of the world into the war, and it seriously looks like we're losing for a while there. Like, the actual humanity is losing to the shadow that is haunting the war. So again, this will be interesting. I don't really do much in the way of like modern history, so like to me, the 1700s or the 1800s to now isn't so much my area of interest. But if it's supernatural or something similar, I will definitely find it interesting. So number 9 came from list 2 as well. There were a lot on list 2 for this video, which I'm not so bummed about because at least it's not all the way into list 4 or anything. So number 9 is a book with a sentient inanimate object as a key character. And we went with that one because I don't think I have a book with a title that is made of more than one palindrome. That's a really long title, and I don't have anything like that. So number 9 ended up being Prey by Michael Crichton, because this follows essentially a predator unleashed by a government unleashed by a laboratory that is micro robots or nanobots, and they learn, they are intelligent, and they are, for all practical purposes, alive. So I think this basically fits perfectly. And I love Michael Crichton. I love his Jurassic books. I love his Andromeda Strain books. Both of those work in with, my love of monsters, my love of plagues, things like that. So I'm really looking forward to this. I've got a few of his books I haven't read yet, which is really no excuse. But yeah, looking forward to this one. Okay, number 10 came from list 2, and it is a book written by an author using a pseudonym. And it is done because, unfortunately, I don't have a novel narrated by an unreliable anthropomorphic object, which I wish I did, because that sounds really cool. I mean, an orange that has a vaguely human-like look to it, and it's narrating the story of the person who picked him up from the supermarket but didn't end up eating him, sort of thing. That sounds cool. But we went with another James Rowlands book, although it is also written by Rebecca Cantrell. It's called Blood Gospel. I don't know if she's using a pseudonym, but I know that James Rowlands himself, it is a pen name, his last name. So I'm looking forward to this one because it also not only is written by one of my favourite authors, but it has an ancient mystery in it, and it has a secret society that's fighting against the people who want to solve the mystery, because it can't be solved, it shouldn't ever be solved for humanity's sake, sort of thing. So it really fits into the books that I adore, very similar to, you know, the Andy McDermott books, and James Rowlands has written books basically very similar to it. So yes, I'm very interested to read this. I actually have all 3 books. I believe it's a trilogy with a novella. So hopefully it'll be the beginning of excellent stuff. All right, number 11 came all the way from list 3. And so we've got a book with a narrative that incorporates multimedia elements, so illustrations or documents. And unfortunately, the reason I went all the way to number 3 is because I don't have a book set in a city where everyone has an invisible companion. And I don't have a book with a cover that features a neon color. I might have, but I just couldn't find it. And I'm not really sure what counts as neon these days. Although cold storage could have worked, because that's a very bright yellow. Oh well, never mind. So, The Zombie Autopsies by Stephen Skolsman, MD, is what fit into this one for me. So yes, zombies, awesome. And one of the defining points of the prompt was, you know, it had illustrations, things like that. And this definitely has illustrations. Look at those zombie brains. Aren't they awesome? So yes, it's zombies. I'm looking forward to it. It looks like a really quick sort of knock it over in an hour before bed sort of book. So yes, that one will be probably struck off really quite quickly, and it'll be cool. Now we are up to number 12. We're halfway there. Number 12. All right. So this one came from list 2. And it was a book with a time-traveling plot twist. And that is because I don't have a story where the characters communicate using a unique form of telepathy involving smells, which would be really cool because, funnily enough, my sense of smell is one of my strongest senses. Like, I need glasses, I don't have very good sight, my hearing sucks, I'm going deaf, but my sense of smell never fails me. So that would be awesome. But the the time travel plot twist ended up for me being not so much a plot twist as just a plot element, because I kind of feel like if it's a plot twist that is a time travel, it means you've already read it. And I didn't want to read stuff I'd already read. So I went into this one. This one is Navigating the Stars by Maria Schneider. And from the perspective of a girl whose parents are, you know, academics and explorers, and they are archaeologists, the galaxy's leading archaeologists. And when new planets are discovered, they take trips back in time to be able to go and investigate them, essentially. And she's not pleased about that because now her social life sucks. So this is a trilogy as well. I was happy enough to include this because I do have the rest of the trilogy. I recently finally got the last one. So I'm looking forward to this. I do love my sci-fi, and the idea of it, you know, with archaeology in it and mystery, it's well up my alley. So this will be cool. Where are we? Number 13. So this was one I had to resort to my final list for. And it is a book with a strong female protagonist because I didn't have a novel where the characters communicate through a fictional social media platform. I think I might have actually somewhere. I don't think that Baghdad Burning counts though. Yeah, I don't have anything through a single platform, unfortunately. And I also don't have a book with a protagonist who has a primary irrational fear. So I don't think so. I mean, they have fears, sure, but it's not a huge plot point. And I don't have a story where the characters communicate, and I don't have a novel where the protagonist gains knowledge by consuming different types of music. How do you consume music? I don't think roasting a violin for dinner is going to work very well. But I can also kind of see him like sucking it up out of the air, these little music notes or something. I don't know. But yeah. All right. So we had a strong female protagonist, and I was actually kind of excited to find this one, to do this one, because I recently found a series that is entirely about a girl who is in caveman era. She is a Cro-Magnon human, Wait, can you say that? She is a Cro-Magnon, and her parents were killed during an earthquake, and so she is taken in by a Neanderthal clan, and they don't trust her initially, they don't like her, but they eventually grow to love her and accept her until she is rejected when a new leader takes over the clan. And I don't think there's, a huge amount stronger than one girl tossed into caveman times all by herself trying to survive. To me, that sounds like a hell of a woman. I was amazingly lucky to find most of the books in a series in a thrift shop, in hardcover, in large. And that just made my day because I'm getting too old and my eyesight is getting too crappy to be reading tiny little books with tiny little print, even with my glasses. It's like, no, I like big and big type everything. So I'm super looking forward to starting that book. It's actually probably the book I'll read first in this list, as soon as it gets here, that is. As soon as it gets here. I'm starting to run out of room on my little table. All right. Number 14, unfortunately had to come from my last list as well. And it is a book recommended by a booktuber. And this is because I didn't have a book with a protagonist who experiences time in a non-linear fashion, or a book with a non-human narrator. I must do. I just couldn't think of it. It's like, I must have one. Although, I do have a book that has an occasional perspective from non-human. So like I've got a book over there who spends a few chapters in the POV of a virus. And I've got some spider books that have the perspective from the spiders. So I kind of dismissed them because they're only small perspectives. But, it might have worked, I suppose. And I don't have a book with a cover that looks like an optical illusion. Oh well. So, a book that was recommended by a booktuber, actually it's been recommended by a lot of booktubers, is The Expanse series by James Corey. And I did have all of this series at one point. I had them all. I found them in a thrift shop. They were sitting on my bookshelf, and I went through a cranky, I'm not into sci-fi phase, and they got unhauled. And now I'm cursing myself as an idiot because after everything I've heard about people talking about them, yes, now I want to read the damn things. So now I've only got book one. And I only got book one because a lady at my local book secondhand store rang me and said, oh, by the way, I've got it. I'm like, yes, I'll have it. Thank you. So, yes. All right, number 15 came from list 3. A novel written in a format that mimics a scientific report or case study. And number 3, because I didn't have a book that takes in place entirely in one room, and I didn't have a book that involved through a series of interconnected dreams, which is a bummer. Not so much the one room one. The one room one would have to be astoundingly well written, I think, to work. And I'm not big on the dreams thing. Unless it's like maybe it's a romance or something. Soulmates connected through dreams. Who knows? That sounds like it could be cool. But another zombie book. We have The Official Zombie Handbook by Sean Page. This is, again, another little short zombie one, and it is a compilation of reports and case studies, like scientific reports, case studies. These people have experienced the zombie apocalypse and they've put together a how-to guide, essentially. And there's everything in here, including, makeshift at-home weapons. It's like, I can use all of these, except the dart. I'm terrible at darts. I've got crappy long-distance aim unless I've got a bow in my hand. But the rest I can use. So yeah, that one will be, again, another quick sort of before-bed read, just about the zombies, just about some fun. And it'll be interesting to look at it from the perspective of kind of, we've obviously lived long enough to compile something like this. So, yeah, cool to read. Okay, number 16 came from list 2. And list 2 is a book with a plot inspired by a dream, either yours or the author's. Well, I kind of feel like it can't be inspired by my dream if I didn't write it. So maybe it'd be more like, it's like a dream I had. And this is because I don't have a book set in a world where people can only speak in metaphors. That'd be an annoying, annoying world. I hate beating around the bush or speaking in metaphors or, people expecting you to understand that they're saying something while not actually saying it. It's like, I hate that. It's absolutely, completely useless to me. It's like, say it. Don't pussyfoot around it, just say it. But, so in that I end up using, so this one is the Blood Countess? Yes. So this one ended up being The Blood Countess by Tara Moss. Now, the reason that this was similar to one of my dreams is the fact that it seems to have apparently a house with attitude and a ghost. And this year I actually watched and read the Discovery of Witches series, both of which have ghosts and houses with attitudes. So I'm looking forward to reading this because of that. Number 17 came from list 3. And it is a story where a character possesses an unconventional sense or perception. It is a story where the character possesses unconventional senses or perceptions. And that is because I didn't have a book that includes recipes or cooking instructions as part of the story, or a book where a protagonist who experiences time at different speeds must cope. Nope, never mind. But that's okay, because this is actually a really, really loved series for me. As far as I'm concerned, if they had made a Charlene Harris series like this and not True Blood, I so would have enjoyed it. This is a story called Gravesight about a girl who was struck by lightning, and now she can sense dead bodies. And so she goes around finding dead bodies for police departments, or because she can also experience the very end moments of a person's life when she stands over the body. So people employ her to go to people's graves and stand over where the body is and go, okay, yeah, no, he died this way. Or, yes, he unalived himself, or yes, he was unalived by someone else, things like that. And these are the stories where she gets in over her head. It's a series of 4 books. I love them. Like I said, if only they'd done this series instead of True Blood, I would have been so much more enthusiastic about the whole thing. And I want to do a video about this series because, yeah, it's so unique as a premise. I think it's absolutely wonderful. It's not my normal sort of book. I could have lived without the romance path that this series took because it was kind of weird, but it was still a good series. So yeah, I'll reread that one just as a bit of fun so I can do a video about it, and yeah, that'll be one of the early quick ones. Okay. Number 18. Number 18 came from list 2. And we are a book set on a floating island in the sky, because I didn't have a book where the plot is driven by a character's ability to manipulate probability. That feels like it would have given me a maths headache anyway. So, this is one of those placeholder books, because the book that I've selected for this prompt is actually on its way to me from eBay, and it is called Helldivers by Nicholas Sansbury Smith. Now, this book sounds like it's right up my alley. It's got post-apocalyptic, it's got action and adventure and thrills and gore. So this series is based on the premise that, I'm not sure why, but the world's bollocksed, like completely gone to hell, and humanity survives in these great big floating airships. There used to be something like 8 of them, and now there is only 1, and they fall out of the sky because essentially they broke down and ran out of parts. To keep them floating, these people called Helldivers, quite literally, dive off the edge of these massive aircraft and go down and scavenge for spare parts and, things that will keep the air city floating. I think there's more than 7 books in the story. I think there's 12. There are a lot of books in the series, and they sound so cool. And I was so chuffed to find book 1 on eBay for what I'm pretending was a reasonable price. And so getting it here, it's gonna be so cool. It feels like that'll be one of the early reads as well. As soon as it gets here, I'll devour that one. So far, my TBR is shaping up to be so cool. I'm definitely going to have to do this going into 2025. It will be awesome. All right, so Number 19 came from list 2 as well. And it is a book with a protagonist who can understand and speak to ghosts. Because I didn't have a story set in a town where everyone has a second invisible shadow. How do you have an invisible shadow? That sounds like a ghost to me. But okay. So, that book is the first book in a trilogy, the omnibus I have, The Business of Death by Trent Jameson. So this is about a reaper. So he's not afraid of death. Mr. D's his boss after all. And he gets up one morning, he's hungover, he's tired, he just wants to do his work. And then things start shooting at him. And then he saves a girl. Then a girl saves him from becoming like her, which is a ghost. And so he can see her, he can talk to her, he shouldn't be able to, and the trilogy follows the two of them. Now, I've marked where book 1 is, so that if, I finally get to that point and go, okay, I've had enough, I'll leave it for later. I don't have to read the whole stinking book. Like, I love having omnibuses. I love having this sort of 3-in-1. It's excellent. But yeah, we'll stick to number 1, see how we go first. Okay, number 20, we're getting there, number 20. This one came from list 4, all the way to list 4. And that is because I didn't have a book where the protagonist's dreams predict the future, or a book that includes a pun title, or a story where the protagonist receives the messages from their future self. All of which sounds pretty cool. So I wouldn't have minded that. So this book explores a social or political issue. Now, I really wasn't sure how I was going to be able to fulfill this particular prompt because, frankly, I don't look for social or political issues in my books. I understand they're a big part of a lot of literature, but my everyday work is all about finding the issue, finding the social problem, finding the connection, finding the deeper meaning in data and research, and things like that. And so honestly, I don't want to bring that into my reading. My reading is for fun. That's also why I don't tend to annotate my books or highlight them or anything, because I spend a lot of time doing that. I'm every day reading research articles, reading posts from the government, reading things that I have to look deeply into the issues of. And all that requires highlighting and marking and tabbing. And yeah, I don't want to bring that home. And so I don't have a lot of books that I've gotten specifically because they represent a social or political issue. My reading is to take me away from what I do every day. So I interpreted this one a little bit creatively. This is a debut book from an author called Sarah Jackson. It's called Not Alone, and it is an apocalypse sort of book, and it is caused by microplastics. That's an issue. We have, a lot of awareness for recycling and, reducing our impact on the planet. But microplastics, like the little tiny flecks, what happens when stuff starts to break down, it's not as visible in the public sphere. And so I kind of decided that would represent this prompt for me. Because 5 years ago, a toxic microplastic storm killed most of the world's population. And this is a girl who is who gave birth very, very soon after or during the storm, and it is her fight to raise her son with the people that are left. So yes, like I said, I had to kind of creatively interpret this one, but this was about as close as I felt like it got, which I was actually also pleased with because I'm really looking forward to this book. Funnily enough, it was the pretty shiny cover that caught my eye in the bookstore. I am such a raven. Pretty shiny stuff's like, oh, check it out. So yeah, a bit of creative interpretation, but I feel like it fits enough to count. So 21 came from list 2. And this is a book that features a secret society because I didn't have a novel where characters solve problems using a game of surreal chess. No, I don't have one of those. Sorry. So we ended up going with The Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. So I have both the books that are currently published for this, and I believe it is a secret society monitoring all of Yale's other secret societies. So it's like kind of, it checks this one in triplicate sort of thing. It well and truly works out for this prompt. I've heard a lot of good things about it. It sounds interesting, and I do like to give YA and NA a try on occasion. Normally, they're not my primary reading, but they're not bad. So I'm happy enough to give this one a try. So number 22 came all the way from list 4. And we are looking at a book with a title that starts with the same letter as your name. It is not fun. That is boring as balls. Because I didn't have a book with a plot driven by a mysterious recurring symbol that I hadn't already read. I didn't have a book where the main character discovers a hidden magical library. Which I really should, because, you know, that's awesome. And I didn't have a book where the characters communicate through a shared dream realm. There's a lot of dreams in this. Along with, you know, the multiple sorts of literature books. So we ended up coming up with another zombie book, The Remaining, by DJ Moles. So this book follows a guy who is, at the slightest hint of trouble for the country, is sent into a bunker. And he's got to stay there with his dog. And he's got to wait for word that it's safe to come out again. That is his job as part of the American military. He's one of a network of people who've had their houses built and had bunkers put under them at the expense of the government. And anytime there's the slightest hint something's gone wrong, he's got to go down there and stay there, just in case shit hits the fan. And you know, he's got to keep track of everything. He's got records down there. He's designed essentially to make sure that the military goes on. And so this is the first, I think it's like 7 books for this series. I've started it like twice, and for some reason it always ends up going back on the shelf. Not to disinterest, but just to circumstance. So, cool. We're down to our last 2. So, number 23 came from list 2. And it is a book with a cover that includes a maze or labyrinth, because I didn't have a book with a cover that incorporates glow-in-the-dark elements, or, I'd used it for that other prompt. So this one became The Map with T.S. Lerner, and I initially thought that this was actually a puzzle, like it reminds me of the Raven's Matrices, but it's not. It is actually part of a maze, one of 3 labyrinths that the 2 people that have to solve the ancient mystery have to get through. The last one, we've gotten there. Thank you guys for sticking around so far. We're at the last one. So this one came from list 2. And it is a book with a protagonist who possesses a unique talent for solving mysteries. Because I didn't have a book where the main character discovers a portal to an alternate dimension in their backyard. That also would have been cool. And, unfortunately Chronicles of Narnia don't count because, that was a wardrobe. If only it could have wardrobe been in the backyard or in a shed or something. Okay, so this is the only other book that is a reread, and this is because I want to do a video on it, and I want to do a video on the series actually. It is the only series I've read from this author, though he has a lot of books, and this is called Hangman by Jack Heath. It is the first book in the Timothy Blake series, and this just blew my mind. It really did. It was probably the single most unique book I'd read in the year that I read it. And it is about a cannibal detective of a sorts. So he is super intelligent. The guy's a genius. He is an observational genius. He notices everything. And the FBI brings him in on missing person cases when they can't find the person. And if he can find the person, dead or alive, he gets paid in unalived criminals so he can eat them. And look, it's a 4-book series so far, and it is astounding. I will be doing a review on each of the books. I'm actually looking forward to reading it. It is unique, it is quirky, it is the sort of character where I can't figure out if I like him or not. You really, really struggle with it. It's like he is an innately dislikable character as this sort of creepy, little unattractive cannibal that he is, but his brain is amazing. It's like, I want to dissect your brain, dude. It sounds like it's rocking in there. So yeah, this one is the final one to go on my list for
24 books TBR in 2024. And that's it. We're done. Thank you for sticking around, guys. Look, I hope you liked this kind of cool idea. I loved it. I had fun, Scorpion notwithstanding, and I will definitely do it again for next year. I think next year I'll kind of split it up into genres, so I'll have like 5 prompts for sci-fi, 5 for romance, 5 for horror. Although, you know, I really struggle to think about the reading that I do as horror. Like, it's monster books, it's plagues, it's zombies, yes, but I don't see them as horrifying. I don't see them the same as the horror you watch in movies and TV. I hate that stuff. I don't ever watch horror, but I read it every day. So yeah, I'll do, I think, 5 prompts, 1 for each in a bunch of areas for 2025. But yeah, I hope you liked it, guys. Thank you for sticking around. That's it, we're done. All right, have a good day, guys.